That's how many people it takes to run the show at night. Between supervisors and dressers and star dressers and everybody else, that is the number of people at night who are all dressed in black backstage that nobody ever sees that actually take care of the show at night. So you see people up on the watching together. And they can all stay magic. I deliver it magic and they make it magic. So, oh, sorry, the wig department. It takes that, there's close to 300 wigs in the show as well, especially when you consider all the understudy wigs. And so they have to do all those. Next one. Makeup. There it is. This is when Anthony had his first makeup fitting. We were still developing the makeup for Vegas, and obviously he has the bad picture on it, and Anthony doesn't make it since they did the show. But, so Ron is downstairs working his magic right now on. Jason, yes, okay. How am I doing for time? Okay, good. But first we're going to do Q&A. So, right? Because I'm assuming you guys have questions. Is that right?
And he's waiting for the mics.
Oh, mics.
I asked a lot of questions. Which one is the most expensive costume piece? And if you could tally up how much everything in the show costs, what?
You know, honest to God, in the end, I don't even know. I know what my budget was. I think I made it. But there's a point at which by the time you arrive with all the trucks full of costumes and you're trying to get the darn thing on stage and deal with all the understudy clothes, we were budgeted at $5 million to get the show into the building. But by the time we got all the understudies clothes delivered, I'm not actually sure that we made it. But on the other hand, what happened in the process of getting this whole thing done, there were supposed to be 6 extra firemen. There was supposed to be, there was a whole bunch of stuff that was in the show and then it got cut, and it was in the show and then it got cut. I knew what my target was, and in the beginning when we started out on the journey, we were going to be fine. I just don't know if we actually ended up there, but I'm sure the guys in the office could tell you exactly what we did. But I never asked them and they never told me. But we must have been kind of closer than anybody else. So the most expensive costume in the show, because of, what did you say?
You did fine.
The most expensive costume in the show is actually the Carlotta Hannibal, and the reason is labor. Which is why labor. Because right now, the reason I don't have one on stage to show you guys, they're working on them. That costume, it's just to do a lot of, it takes a lot of abuse. Every single thing on it is handmade, like those little tabs in front. First somebody hand paints them. Then behind every single color, they trim punch out from the back. They put little string inside, so they're all puffy. Then they go back over the top of that and they sew colored stones on them that match the color. Then they go back and they trim it all out, and then it has to be backed up. And that's just one tab, and there's 5 on the skirt, and there's 4 in the middle. So, if you think about that, it probably takes the painter 2 hours to paint each tab, So that most of almost everything you see here that has a lot of detail on it, it also means it has a lot of personalities in it. And there was a time in my life when I used to be embarrassed about talking to people about what Phantom costumes cost, and I realized I'm not going to do that anymore, because every single shop, I don't use any sweatshops. Every single shop that I use, they're a place I have health insurance and they pay a decent wage. So we don't do any sweatshops. After a while I realized that was important. And also to get the level of artisanship and craftsmanship you need to make costumes that are this complicated, you really can't send it off to China. You just can't. I mean, I know there's some people who've tried, and opera companies who've tried it, and it's always a disaster. Lion King actually tried it. The ones that tried to have stuff made overseas, copying things, and it turns out it just didn't work. Because our singers really have to sing opera style, those bodices have to fit perfect. And that little nuance of taking it in a quarter inch here, letting that half inch here, if it needs to come in a quarter inch here, but come out a quarter inch here, that's actually really important. And it sounds like nitpicky, but for singers, because their breath is all over the place, some singers breathe in front, some singers breathe in the side, some breathe down here, some breathe down their back. I mean, it's we couldn't believe, sort of legend that we do. But it's actually really, really, really important. So every time we change cast and have to refit something on somebody, the alterations are really expensive for that reason, because the clothes have to fit like they're over a corset, but yet the singer, they have to actually be able to move like this, because the singers have to be able to sing in them. So it's unbelievably time-consuming, but it needs to be done. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, let's do over here.
What is the average lifespan of costumes in general? Because I know you can only refurbish them and spiffing them up
I
so
actually have some menswear in the Broadway production that is original from 1988 because it's made out of good English wool. They don't do anything bad in it. You know, they just kind of stand around as you. The costumes that are most fragile and last the least long, believe it or not, the dance clothes, because they have to be lightweight, they have to be made out of featherweight stuff, and they're constantly moving in them. So like these, the silver blades we call these, we usually refurbish the petticoats every year. We put in a rows of horsehair around the hem, which this one has not gotten, because that's put in it. And then on the second year, we actually take all that knit up and freshen that in. And then the third year, we try to set it aside. Is it time to build new ones or not? So usually these get rebuilt like every 4 years. The degas, because they're cotton and they get washed, and the girls wear them a lot, and they sit around the floor and they get dirty. And so those actually usually get replaced about every 2.5 years or so, depending. If you're lucky enough and you have the same ballerinas that stay in your show that long, the clothes actually wear better, because as long as they're on the same body day after day. Now think about this: these clothes get worn 8 times a week, and it's like, can you imagine if you wore the same thing in your closet like 8 times a week for like 4 hours? And then it gets washed or dry cleaned or whatever. Because our clothes are really meticulously maintained, because they have to be, because it's in our fabric. But we would do it anyway, because nobody wants to put anything that's like smelly and grimy. It's like, but despite maintenance, there are certain things in the show that have to be made out of fragile fabrics, and then they just wear out. Masquerade is the second thing. The masquerade clothes are notoriously fragile because everything on them is sparkly or glittery. And if you go to any fabric store and look at the sparkly and glittery fabrics, they're not spooky. They're like, it's the kind of fabrics that make those clothes be really wonderful is the kind of fabric that doesn't last you 10 years. I mean, we do still have, oh yeah, I'm sure I have masquerade clothes in the other tours and the other shows in the U.S. that have been at least 10 years old, but that's because they've just been sewed back together and sewed back together and sewed back together. And when I do production, I have these giant plastic Ziploc bags that one of the things my core assistants have to do. They write no scrap too small on every single bag, and we go around to every single shop and staple one to the end of everybody's table. And once every couple of weeks, we go around and collect all the bags, so that instead of the drapers throwing the scraps in the wastebasket, they put them in the bag. And that's what we use for maintenance. I mean, they have big boxes downstairs in the wardrobe room of stuff that's used for maintenance.
Since everything is custom made to each of the individuals, and since it's done so form-fitting, is there some kind of contract for them for weight gain or anything like that? Because, I mean, 5 pounds here or there was making a difference in how it fits.
And we are really good at, well, yes and no. For our ballerinas, it's really, I mean, if a ballerina ever got as big as me, out. I know ballerina. Unless you want a little dancing clothes and but for the singers, there's absolutely no way that you can apply that kind of rule. You just can't do it. It's impossible. We are wizards at making things fit a million different body types, as I'm sure the wardrobe crew would love to tell you all their stories about.
I'm talking about the individual that you fit, you have them in the picture.
Yeah, but there's no contractual thing. And we've had many pregnant Christines and Carlottas, believe it or not. I've gotten some girls, we've got all kinds of little tricks where we can do things to the clothes that'll make it possible for them to, well, actually, Kristen was pregnant for when she was Christine. It's entirely possible for them to be in the show and be pregnant, which means your shape can be different every day, So we have a lot of, tricks that we do, but there's a certain point at which you think, okay, this is just too small. That's ridiculous. This show, we've been very lucky because our casting has been very stable. We haven't, our casting is almost 90% the same as we started, which is kind of unusual. And on Broadway and on the tour, every time I check my email, I'm scared. Go back to the warehouse, It's sometimes, it's bad for the clothes to be over-altered. It really